The grocery store promises choice, but every fruit has already passed a hardness test built for 2,000-mile truck rides. If it bruises, it is erased, no matter how it tastes. That is why you have never tasted North America's richest, most decadent fruit, a custard so fragile, industrial agriculture cannot control it. For a century, the fruit has been hidden by logistical tyranny. What fruit is so delicious it is outlawed by the supply chain? The answer will change how you see real food forever. Every fruit in the supermarket is measured by a single, silent rule: survive the journey. Before an apple earns its place on a shelf, it faces a battery of tests designed to mimic the punishment of a cross-country haul. In produce labs, engineers drop apples from 3 feet onto steel plates, stack them 10 layers deep on pallets, and run vibration tables for hours. Each simulation is calibrated to match the stress of a 2,000-mile truck ride. If a fruit bruises, it is out. If it softens, it is out. The standard is not taste, but toughness. Red, delicious apples, bred for firmness, endure more than 12 pounds of pressure before yielding. Their skin resists the kind of shock that would turn most fruit to mush. Packing houses use penetrometers to measure this resistance, rejecting entire lots if the average falls below 5.5 kilograms of force. Visual grading lines scan for even a hint of surface damage. More than 10% bruising, and the shipment never leaves the dock. Pallets are loaded 8 boxes high, each layer pressing down with hundreds of pounds of force. Apples survive weeks in cold storage, then another week on display, all without losing their shape. This is the quiet calculus behind every piece of produce. The further it travels, the harder it must be. Flavor is an afterthought. Fragility is a liability. The system rewards only those fruits that can endure the mechanical gauntlet of harvesters, forklifts, and refrigerated trucks. Anything less is erased before it ever reaches your cart. The result is a produce aisle filled with fruit engineered for endurance, not delight. The industry has built a fortress around shelf life, locking out anything that dares to bruise. The Pawpaw never stood a chance in the world of cardboard crates and conveyor belts. At the first sign of softness, buyers walk away. The Pawpaw's skin is thin, its flesh so tender that even a gentle squeeze leaves a bruise. Growers who dared to offer samples at packing houses watched as inspectors pressed a thumb into the fruit and frowned. One buyer in Ohio called it the fruit that arrives ripe and leaves ruined. Attempts to ship Pawpaws across state lines ended with boxes of brown mush. There are stories of entire harvests dumped behind warehouses because pallets collapsed under their own weight. No wax coating can save it, no refrigeration can pause its rapid march from ripe to overripe. In a system where apples must survive a 1,000-mile journey and bananas ripen on cue, the Pawpaw is a logistical heretic. It refuses to be boxed, stacked, or stored. It does not just fail the supply chain, it exposes the chain's priorities. Every year, breeders and university programs try to toughen the Pawpaw, selecting for firmer flesh or thicker skin, but the result is always the same. Flavor is lost, and the fruit remains invisible. Grocery buyers do not even bother to write rejection letters. The Pawpaw simply vanishes from the list of possibilities. Not because it is unloved, but because it cannot be controlled. In the age of uniformity, the Pawpaw is a fruit with a mind of its own. A soft, fragrant rebellion hiding in the understory, waiting for someone willing to taste what the system cannot deliver. Deep in the shaded woods of the American Midwest, a tree stands out as an anomaly. Its leaves hang long and drooping, each one broad enough to pass for something pulled from the Amazon, not Ohio. The branches hold clusters of fruit that look almost tropical, green, kidney-shaped, heavier than they seem. Yet this is not some foreign guest. This is Asimina triloba, the pawpaw, the only member of its family to brave freezing winters and summer droughts north of the Gulf Coast. Botanists call it a tropical ghost. The pawpaw's family tree stretches back to the custard apple clan, a group that usually thrives in steamy jungles. Somehow, This species migrated north and learned to defy the frost. In spring, before the canopy fills in, pawpaw trees unveil their secret. Their flowers are the color of dried blood, each one hanging upside down like a velvet bell. These blooms do not chase honeybees or butterflies. Instead, they release a faint scent, something between yeast and old meat, meant to call in a stranger cast of visitors. Flies and beetles, drawn by the promise of decay, crawl inside the flowers. Unlike the apple or the pear, which rely on bees, the pawpaw's pollinators are the undertakers of the forest floor. The flowers open first as female, then later switch to male, a strategy called protogeny that nearly guarantees pollen must travel from tree to tree. This self-incompatibility keeps each patch genetically mixed, but it also means that without the right insects, the fruit set can be poor. In wild groves, growers sometimes hang bits of raw meat to lure more flies, hoping to coax a better harvest from the shadows. The pawpaw's reproductive dance is a study in paradox. It is a tree that looks tropical but weathers snow. Its flowers mimic rot to attract insects that most orchardists would call pests. Even its fruit, with flesh as yellow and soft as custard, seems to belong in another climate. Each spring, the cycle repeats: maroon flowers, insect visitors, and if all goes well, clusters of green fruit swelling through the summer. By late August, the leaves cast deep, prehistoric shade over the forest floor, and the fruit begins to ripen in secret. Every detail of the pawpaw's biology refuses to cooperate with the usual rules. It is not content to be just another tree in the woods. It insists on being strange. It insists on being noticed, if only by those willing to step off the trail and pay attention to the quiet drama unfolding between flower, insect, and fruit. In the world of industrial agriculture, the pawpaw is a botanical outlier, a tropical ghost haunting the temperate zone, carrying secrets of flavor and survival that the supply chain cannot touch. Long before the pawpaw became a casualty of the supply chain, it was a cornerstone of American survival and culture. In the autumn of 1806, the Lewis and Clark expedition, battered and nearly out of food, turned to the riverbanks for sustenance. William Clark wrote in his journal, "Entirely out of provisions, subsisting on pawpaws." For days, the men lived on nothing but the soft yellow pulp, spooned straight from the skin. It was enough. The fruit's dense calories and sweet custard texture kept them moving until they reached the safety of settlements along the Missouri. This was not a rare event. The pawpaw's range stretches from the Great Lakes to the Gulf, from the Mississippi east to the Atlantic. Indigenous families knew its value for centuries, harvesting fruit along the river valleys, drying slices for winter, and using the bark for cordage. The word Asimina comes from the Algonquin language, a trace of its deep American roots. When colonists arrived, they adopted the fruit as their own. Thomas Jefferson grew pawpaws at Monticello, carefully recording the seedlings in his garden notes. He prized them for their flavor, a homegrown luxury that needed no import ship or orchard. Folklore claims George Washington enjoyed pawpaws chilled as a summer treat at Mount Vernon. While the legend lingers, what's certain is that the fruit was known and valued by those who shaped the nation. In the hills and hollows of Appalachia, pawpaws became a lifeline during the Great Depression. Families foraged along creeks and fence lines, gathering the soft fruit as a rare source of fat and sugar when money was scarce and the harvest was thin. WPA oral histories recall children hunting for hillbilly mangoes and Indiana bananas, eating the pulp straight from the skin with their fingers. In those lean years, a pawpaw patch could mean the difference between hunger and a full belly. Songs and stories kept the fruit alive in memory, even as it vanished from the market. Way Down Yonder in the Pawpaw Patch became a playground rhyme, echoing through generations. Towns named Pawpaw dot the map from West Virginia to Illinois, silent markers of a fruit that once anchored communities. Recipes for pawpaw pudding and custard fill 19th century cookbooks, proof that this wasn't just a wild snack, but a staple of American kitchens. The pawpaw's absence from the grocery aisle is more than a logistical footnote. It is a cultural erasure, an entire lineage of taste, memory, and survival pruned away by the demands of the modern supply chain. To reclaim the pawpaw is to reclaim a piece of American heritage, to taste what explorers, presidents, and foragers once counted as their own. Finding a pawpaw is not a matter of luck. It is a test of patience and attention. The trees cluster in the shaded understory along river bottoms and on the damp slopes of old hillsides, where the soil holds moisture and the canopy filters the sun. Their leaves hang in loose whorls, long and drooping, casting a green shadow that feels heavier than the woods around it. These groves are quiet, almost hidden, and the fruit never announces itself. You have to look beneath the taller trees, following the curve of a creek or the low ground after a summer rain. Pawpaw patches often grow in colonies, spreading by underground roots, so where you find one, you will find many. The fruit itself is never plucked from the branch. A pawpaw that resists your touch is not ready. It will not ripen off the tree and the flavor will be lost. The only honest way to harvest is to give the trunk a gentle shake. If the fruit is ripe, it will fall with a soft thud into the leaf litter. That is your signal. Anything that clings is not meant for you, not yet. The shake method is more than tradition. It is a rule of stewardship. By taking only what the tree offers, you leave the rest for wildlife, raccoons, opossums, and the zebra swallowtail butterfly, whose caterpillars depend on pawpaw leaves. You have 48 hours once the fruit hits the ground. The skin will bruise from the lightest touch, and the flesh inside will begin to ferment. Wait too long, and you will find a pile of mush, already claimed by ants and beetles. This urgency is not a flaw, but a feature. The pawpaw demands to be eaten at its peak, not stored, not shipped, not forgotten in a basket. You have to earn it, and you have to act quickly. Inside, the pulp is surrounded by large glossy seeds, sometimes as many as a dozen, each the size of a thumb. These seeds are not just inedible, they are toxic if chewed, containing compounds that can cause nausea or worse. The skin, too, is off limits. Only the soft, golden flesh is safe to eat. Foragers who know the fruit pass this warning down with the harvest. Never bite through the seeds, never scrape the skin. This is the price of admission to the pawpaw patch. A little caution, a little knowledge, and the willingness to meet the fruit on its own terms. For those who follow these rules, the reward is immediate and complete. The pawpaw does not travel, does not wait, and does not compromise. It is the opposite of everything in the produce aisle. If you want this fruit, you must go to the woods, shake the tree, and trust your senses. The rest is up to nature. Cutting into a ripe pawpaw is like breaking the seal on a secret. The skin gives with the slightest pressure, revealing a golden pulp that glistens and yields to the spoon. The scent is mango and banana with a hint of melon, and the texture is pure custard. No crunch, no snap, just a soft, rich mouthful that dissolves on the tongue. The taste is layered. First the sweetness of banana, then a tang of pineapple, and a mellow finish of vanilla. It feels out of place in a temperate forest, more fitting for a beach than a riverbank in Ohio. Each fruit delivers a caloric payload rare among North American produce, high in fat, rich in protein, dense enough to be called survival food. A single pawpaw can offer 80 to 100 calories, more than most apples or pears. And it carries the nutritional firepower that fueled explorers and fed hungry families through hard times. The revival of the pawpaw is not happening in boardrooms or laboratories. It is happening at kitchen tables, farmers markets, and festivals where people gather to taste, trade, and celebrate what the supply chain forgot. In Athens, Ohio, the Pawpaw Festival draws thousands each September. Tents line the fields, offering pawpaw ice cream, pawpaw beer, and pawpaw salsa. Growers swap stories and seeds, and local chefs compete to see who can coax the most out of the fruit's custard flesh. Attendance has doubled in the past decade, and the festival now serves as a proving ground for new recipes and cultivars. Behind the scenes, breeders like Neil Peterson and the team at Kentucky State University have spent decades searching for the perfect Pawpaw, selecting for flavor, yield, and a little more resilience. Varieties such as Shenandoah, Sunflower, and KSU Atwood have emerged from years of careful crossing and taste tests. Each cultivar carries its own balance of sweetness, acidity, and texture, but none sacrifices the custard heart of the fruit. Even with these improvements, the Pawpaw's core remains unchanged. It must be eaten fresh, close to the patch, and shared quickly before its brief window closes. Simple recipes keep the fruit honest. Spoon the pulp over yogurt, blend it into smoothies, fold it into quick breads or ice cream. The best way is still the oldest, just scoop and eat. The Pawpaw does not need sugar or spice to impress. It only needs a willing hand, a spoon, and a moment of attention. With every bite, the fruit delivers more than flavor. It delivers a taste of what American abundance once meant and what it could mean again. Today, over 99% of US grocery fruit is chosen for how well it survives a truck, not for how it nourishes or delights. The Pawpaw endures as proof that true flavor and real abundance cannot be engineered, boxed, or scaled. In a world chasing convenience, some treasures can only be found by stepping off the beaten path. What else are we missing for the sake of efficiency?